I'm seeing that people are starting to populate, and yeah, this is kind of a continuation of our chat from last week. And I just titled it "How the Mechanism of Estrangement Works," both in
Yeah,
families and in the nation. And it's kind of stunning to me as a person who's estranged from my family, just to see how that structure of power, you know, and as we were saying in the preview here, I wanted to be sure, and it's like every time white men are the driving force of oppression. I mean, white supremacy is a patriarchal system. The people that are at fault here are the white men. And I say this as a white man to take my accountability. Even
yeah,
though, yes, I know there are white men who are doing good work, but it's like, look, until everybody is equal, nobody is. And we need to work that way. And we shouldn't be giving credit for a job that's partway done. But you wrote a story and you were taking the same emphasis. I often talk about other things white men could be doing. You wrote an article about other things white women could be doing. We
right.
were looking forward to having Natasha K come, and she'll probably come later. Sometimes she gets caught up with family stuff. But go ahead and talk about your article, and then we'll just continue with this discussion.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying earlier, I can only speak to my experience. I'm not a white woman. I'm not a black woman. They they each have their own perspective of what patriarchy has done to them. But white women in particular, it was an experience that I lived and I was surrounded by and I grew up in. And we definitely have some responsibility and accountability in this whole patriarchal system. For instance, we're the enforcers of it because that we are the proximity to that power. White men kind of took white women and made us second best, and we just went along with this narrative that this is kind of how it is. We have our gender roles and we have our women are expected to do this and men are expected to do this, and it really has this hierarchy of power that only exists because we uphold it. So then what happens when a woman like me, who left patriarchy and now I'm on the
Yeah.
outside looking in, what happens when women like me finally leave it and then we realize that this whole power structure, this whole hierarchy is all bullshit?
Yeah. 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 Well, I just want to emphasize we're talking about people like Pam Biondi and Christy Noam, and like that
Yeah,
proximity to patriarchal power. And I just do want to emphasize that because I mean, people were when we say it's these what is the word? They carry the crumbs for the patriarchy, but they're the first to be sacrificed, right? And
right. They
those are the
take
people
this
we're emphasizing.
deal. Yeah, they take this deal like stay in your lane, enforce the hierarchy, and we'll let you be better than someone. But how does it always end? You know, what's
Yeah.
Christy and Pam doing nowadays? You know?
They're sweating and worrying about being called up to testify before Congress. Both of them are, and they're both awaiting. Yeah, they're both away. They're probably going to be looking at prison terms at some point. So
Yeah, as they should, honestly, because it's like they just kind of they attach themselves to a power structure that was never going to protect them in the end,
yeah,
ever.
it's a false promise that keeps coming up. I wanted to tell a little bit of a story, and I think this is be something that kind of illustrates what we're talking about. And and this it goes back to family. Um, 10 years ago or so, my grandmother passed away, and my aunt. So it's an estate story. So right there, I'm sure you have experience with things like that, right?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
a family that's already kind of shaken up, it's like you start getting where money is involved.
Mhm.
She had a house, and she said, "We're gonna sell the house, and then the proceeds will go to all the grandkids." Oh, there's Natasha. I was just starting. Good to see you, Natasha.
Tasha.
Hi, here we go again.
It's all good, Natasha. We're all into it. Well, let me
Are
just
you
summarize for you what we're at to. We wanted to just emphasize, the kind of where we're being critical because we know that there's a lot of women who are doing great work, but we're critical of the types like Pam Biondi and Christy Noam who are carrying water for the patriarchy, and then they're the first to be sacrificed. And one of the examples I was just leading into was this estate issue with my family, where grandma had passed away, and in her will, my aunt was the executor, and she said all the proceeds of this house will go to the kids and the grandkids, not directly to her kids. Well, it's like, okay, that sounds great. But at that point, my father got involved. And he was like, well, and this is really funny. And I'm sure, Evie, you'll have had experiences with this. When you get these patriarchal men, he comes forward with this whole attitude of, well, actually, this estate owes me a lot of money. But because I'm so generous and kind and wonderful, I won't take the total amount that the estate owes me because that would wipe it out, and nobody would get anything. Instead, I'll just take like, $30,000. And so he puts it all like this. And everybody in the family is like, "Oh, that's so generous of you." But because I was already estranged from my dad, I was the one who wrote back to the executor, my aunt, and said, "Well, I think he needs to show some receipts. I
Mm.
think this is reasonable. And your job as his executor is to do this." But
Mhm.
her loyalty was interesting because her loyalty was more to my dad, her brother, than it was to her kids and grandkids. And she was writing these emails to everybody saying, Walter's saying this. And she was presenting me as being completely unreasonable. I'm like, hey, now, all I said was he claims he's owed money. And it's like, and he says he did all these things. I witnessed him hang out with my grandma. He would do things. He's like, here's a new TV. But he always presented it as a gift, while she was alive. Now she didn't agree to when she died, all these things that he'd done for her
Right.
would be paid back to her.
Mhm.
But this was ongoing. And I started because the executor, my aunt, was so loyal to him and she was misrepresenting what I was saying. I was getting all these emails from everybody in the family about how I was, so don't you realize how much stress you're causing? And I'm just like, but I could sign off on this paper, and it's just like, I'm not going to agree to this. I needed to go to a judge. I was just sort of like, hey, let's get to that moment of disclosure. Let's see what a judge says. Is he going to pretend like I'm the one who's so out of control? But in the end, and it's like in the end, I capitulated to it because I just got tired of getting everybody attacked. And I was like, okay, it's like it came out to like $400 or whatever to the kids. And she went ahead and
Exhausting.
I'm sorry?
It's exhausting though.
It is. And I'm just like, it's not that much. But then the executor, you know what she did? She made me, because it was supposed to go to the kids. She was like, I need you to send me documentation that you put this into an account for the kids. And so I printed out this paper, like the bank account. I blacked out everything. I was just like, you don't get to know the account number. And then I like copied it and sent it in. But it was just one of those cases of, and I told her family later because they didn't talk. Nobody talked to me for like 5 or 6 years. And I talked to him later. It's like, my dad pressured your mother to do something illegal because what she did was sign off on this. And we could sue her. Oh, there's a phone call. Hello. I'm like, we could sue her. But even then they don't understand. So I don't know. I thought I'd throw that one out there, and I'm sure it's something you guys have similar stories to. Just go from there. So go ahead. Whoever wants
Yeah,
to.
I'm completely the enemy in my family. I mean, I've been no contact now for 10 years. It'll be 10 years and well, now it is 10 years now. And I blew up everyone's spot. I was labeled crazy and unstable and she's probably doing drugs and it's like, no, I was reacting
Yeah.
to very real reality and I was
Yeah.
calling everybody out and I was saying everything that they were doing wrong that was being harmful to not just me, but to my children, to other family members. Um, just the lying and I have an uncle who's a sex offender for life in Wisconsin and I didn't even find out about it until I was in my 20s. But every year
Family secret. Yeah.
I was sitting at a table next to him and, it just kinda it's those little things where I'm just like, "That was so fucked up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and y'all need to acknowledge that because I'm not gonna be quiet about it anymore. I'm not gonna keep these secrets. This is harmful and horrible." And I was, like, the person that just kinda lit the match and imploded my whole family, and then I walked away.
I love that.
So, I don't know.
The joke there on the
Yeah.
doc.
But, I mean, it was
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
It was a necessary thing to kind of there's my flashlight again, and I'm shining the light, and I'm saying, "Here, over here." But I think more people need to do that, and I think that, once we bring these bad behaviors to light and we talk about them and we have language for it now. There's no reason why we can't be bringing these things to light. We have language for it now. We have psychology that backs it. We have, you know, all these resources that's saying this is wrong. We shouldn't be moving like this anymore as a society, and yet people still uphold it. Just even going back to like the election,
Yeah.
if
Yep.
people need numbers and stuff, the voting data alone 51% of white women voted for that creep. And I cannot
Yeah.
wrap my mind around it, how 51% in 2026 still feel the need, after, we've already proven that we don't need men to survive. We've already proven that we can live this life without them.
Mhm.
They need us.
Right.
We're both agreeing. Natasha's shaking her
Because
head like
I
this,
have
and
this
I'm shaking my head like
conversation
this.
with my sister, like, every day. I'm venting about it, so yeah.
Yeah. And, but yet 51% of white women still was just like, anything you say, sir.
Mhm.
And then where do they end up after that too? Because at the end of the day, they're not equals. I'm fortunate to be in a marriage right now where my husband and I are very much equals. I'm allowed to have my autonomy and he's allowed to have his autonomy. We don't try to control each other's, you know,
Yeah.
who they are.
So much
And
less work to try to control somebody all the time. It's like
it
you can
really
rest.
is. And I can be very messy sometimes. I have a big mouth. I say the thing, if I see the thing, I say the thing. And then I kind of, I have regrets sometimes, but not all the time because, if I see something happening and I voice it, even though maybe the timing was wrong or whatever, there's always, I've hurt people's feelings because I don't articulate things very well speaking. I'm a better writer than a speaker.
Right.
Um, but sometimes I don't articulate the things that I want to say and it doesn't land the way that I intended and it hurts people's feelings, but it's out. And, I will say my apologies and my sorries after it's out because I'm kind of a dumbass when it comes to certain things that I bleh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but a lot of the time, a lot of the things that I say, they have merit, they have weight, and we just need to talk about them.
Mhm.
We need to understand that the patriarchy this is thousands and thousands of years of genetic code in women that we need to start sorting out. It's our responsibility to do this, because the patriarchy they're never going to give us permission to leave. They're never going to be like, oh, you know what? You earned your place in
Yeah, that's not happening.
life. They're never
Uh,
going to do that. They're always going to. I always
you
say,
finally did enough. You finally did
Mhm.
enough,
great,
Yeah,
way to
no,
go.
not happening. That's
There's
not.
cookies in the back. I know. They're never gonna do that, so we have to take our place in this world, and
Yeah,
there's no reason why we can't
yeah.
at this point.
Natasha?
Well, I'm just curious, Evie, because like you're we're very, very similar. And I'm wondering when did that, spirit come over you? Like when did you first start saying what needed to be said and without like being afraid? Have you always been like that? Or was there a certain time of your life that you think brought it?
I think I've always been like that, like I always say that the smear campaign against me started when I was a young kid.
Mm.
I would observe things happening in my house and I'd run to school and I'd tell my teachers all the stuff. And that's one of as a former early education director, you'd be amazed at the things that these children will tell you.
Yeah.
And I was one of those kids where I would see things and I'd say things, or if things didn't make sense to me, I wanted to know. I was a very
Mhm.
inquisitive kid and I stared a lot. I
Yeah.
was constantly, my mom would constantly be like, Amber, stop staring. And it's like, but I need to know, like, why
Mhm.
is that like that? Why is,
Yeah.
I was just inquisitive. And my parents were always silencers. They always would tell me to stay small and, force me to shrink myself. And it drove me nuts as a kid. And we butted heads my whole life. Um, then when I got to be, a teenager, there was a lot of things that happened where it was just very overwhelming for my developing brain to handle. And I had moments where I just conformed and I
Yeah.
just said, okay, this is how I'm supposed to be. This is what I'll be. And I hated it and I was miserable. And I, fought bouts of depression on and off throughout my teenage years and my 20s because of it. And then I finally, at 34, I finally just I think, was beaten down so bad that I didn't know how to continue on. And like I was telling Walter on our last chat, um, the pain of staying the same,
Mhm.
was outweighing the pain of change. And that's when I finally said, "I have to move differently," and I did. And at 33, 34 years old, I moved 1,200 miles away. I left everybody, even my children. It was something where I was gonna die if I stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't wanna die, and I have had talks with my kids about this all the time. I was like, I needed to do this to save my life, and, um, they don't they still I harmed them, and this is where, like, 2 truths can be true at
Yeah.
the same time. My life was in danger, but at the same time, I really harmed my children by leaving them. And that's something that I had to take accountability for, and I'm probably gonna have to do this our
Yeah.
whole lives because they they were owed better, and they deserved better, but fortunately for them, they were a mom that was just stuck in this cycle that I could not get out of and figure out how to be a good mom to them. I couldn't
Yeah.
I loved them with all my heart, and for a long time, I was a good mom according to patriarchal standards.
Mhm.
I just got to a crossroads where it was this or a dead mom, and I was like, it's
Yeah.
better for me to be 1,200 miles away than to have a dead mom, and that's kind of where my brain. But
Yeah.
in the last 10 years, I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned so much about exactly, how the patriarchy has affected me, how the secrets and families have affected me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also understand all the things that I did, because my hands aren't clean. I had my moments where I slipped right into that white woman role. Now I have
Yeah.
accountability for it. So, I always say, be brutally honest with me because I need to hear it, for one.
Mhm.
And I know that I think a lot of white women in particular, they're afraid to hear it because it's just things that they don't want to admit about themselves. But, the truth is the truth is the truth.
Mhm.
So you just have to face it. And I've been facing things for the last 10 years and I still get things wrong. I'm not perfect, but, I this is where we need to be because every single time women as a whole have tried to get somewhere, and let me say just this too is, um, Black and brown women have been at the center of every single movement for all women. So
Mhm.
white women need to acknowledge that. There none of anything that we have in this world or in this life would have been possible if it was left up to white women. Black and
Uh,
brown are the ones that so I just wanna say that, and I think that that is a truth that white women absolutely have to
mhm.
acknowledge before we can move together as a collective
Mm.
unit.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and it's kind of like, I know it can be really uncomfortable, but, to talk about these things to me just shows, like, an immense amount of strength. Like, I am so grateful to white allies like you who are not afraid to say the things and call people out because there's so many people that are still scared to. There are people that, and I see it even here, but there's, people that aren't purposely, isolating, but, I can tell that there are people who aren't comfortable talking with Black women and women of color. Um,
Mhm.
and it's like how I want to know how I guess can white people help push back against that uncomfortable feeling, how do you, because these are biases, unconscious biases that, everybody has. How do we help white women understand that it's not personal, it's just something that has to be acknowledged and, continue not being afraid to hold their fellow white women accountable or tell them, when something that they say is inappropriate or educate them. How do we get people to, realize that this is what has to happen without them being on the defense and feeling like they're being attacked. And, because it kind of just, it kind of feels like an endless cycle, I guess. Like a lot of people are waking up, but at the same time, there's still work to do. And,
Mhm.
that's why, like, I really appreciate people like you coming into this space and doing the thing because, I don't see a lot of it, to be
Mm,
honest, like all around, people that are willing to call the thing out, say the thing, I just don't see it a lot, to be honest. So
mm.
Well,
you're
I mean, it has to cost them something, and the things that it's gonna cost them are huge things. Me breaking away and me finally finding the strength to tell everybody, give
Yeah,
everybody the middle finger.
yeah,
I lost everything. I lost my family. I lost my friends. I lost my children. I lost
yeah,
everything. A good amount of time, and I had to sit with it
yeah,
because this is something that I just don't. For one, patriarchy does ingrain in women that, you know, never surrender, never admit fault, don't
yeah,
take accountability. And this is it's a huge accountability check because we do have sovereignty. You know, Men aren't the only people on this earth that have sovereignty. We have sovereignty and we have minds of our own and we have hearts and we hold empathy. I know we do. It's just
yeah,
we can't be afraid to I you know, I'm still trying to figure it out is what I'm trying to get to because
yeah,
some women where if you just tell them outright and you look at them and be like, "That was fucked up. Don't say that again."
yeah.
There's women that respond to that. Then there's women that are just like, you have to like coddle them and be like,
Mhm.
Honey, I totally get what you're trying, I get it." And I'm not very good at that. I've been trying to soften myself a little bit because I know that sometimes there's like that gray area that I have to live in. Um,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, I'm kind of a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person. And if I see something and I hear somebody say something, I'll be like, that was racist. I don't know why you would say
yeah.
like that. And here's why.
I think it's really interesting, and we always have to remember everybody's at different kind of levels of what they're having to deal with, and so sometimes it's really easy for us to see because you're like, when you're being burned alive, it's different than when you just touch the stove,
Right.
right? So it's like that kind of thing. But I like the structure of how it works, and I feel really privileged to be involved in this conversation too, but with you too. So I just thank you for that. But I just want to bring in, like, with my perspective, because I did the same thing. I left my family, I left everything, and I lived in Peru. I just left. I'm like, I'm gone, I'm gonna die if I don't leave. And what you see though is it's like, even as we are on our personal journey of personal empowerment, there are other forces that are still, even at a distance, trying to work to break you down. I think we forget that's
Mhm.
constant. And I've forgotten that. It's like, why? And because once I left, he had established my father, and it's the same patriarchal system. He was the only source of, money and power, and I
Mhm.
was worthless. And it's like you're afraid to leave because you feel it all comes through him. And they make it convenience because they have their moment of love bombing. Well, here's a moment of me being generous. Never mind the year of them being abusive. Oh, I'm generous again. And then, like, they know exactly. I mean, they've got it really well worked out. And then the second you leave, you become a threat. Not just you, not just your relationship, but his relationship with everybody else.
Yep.
And it's that ingenuity of the corrupt again, where they become just frantic, where we're out there innocently just like, I just wanna have a life. I wanna figure out who I am. I'm gonna take these basic steps. That's different than a person who knows who they are, who's just decided to be corrupt, and is just
Yeah.
now frantically trying to protect this mechanism that they built up.
Mhm.
And so they're talking bad about you to everybody. And and then we get the flying monkeys thing where people that you haven't talked to in years, they see you and like, gee, you're not the way I expected you to be. It's like, yeah, because you only talk to this person who hates me and who's been
Right.
running me down. And so
Right.
you've developed this impression of who I am that's so strong that it makes you deny the reality when you see it. You're confused now because it's like, gee, talking to this person doesn't seem like the person, his father said he is.
Mhm.
And yeah, all of that is ongoing, and they'll come, and it is just easier because the other people we appeal to, you appeal to, and it should be like the women within that power structure should be the ones that are easiest to appeal to become your allies. But even there, like you said, it has to be more painful to stay than it does to leave. So
It is,
that's
and
just ongoing, the ongoing structure.
self-worth has a lot to do with it too. I've met a lot of women
Mm,
who, they kind of portray this, independent woman stuff, but behind closed doors, like, their self-worth is
yeah,
down the tubes. This proximity of power, it's like they just can't. It's like losing a limb. It's hard to figure out at first how to live with that missing limb, and that proximity of power is a huge limb. It's like cutting off their head,
yeah,
and it's then they wonder, like, well, where's my self-worth, when they've had men telling them what their worth is their entire
yeah,
lives.
yeah.
Like, when me growing up in families, like I said, my parents were my first smear campaigners. My dad, I remember vividly, because I was in kindergarten, and I knew what was going on, and I still have all kinds of memories from back then. And I remember my dad telling my kindergartner teacher that, Amber tells stories, because
Uh,
I told some things that, were going on behind closed doors at my house. And he's like, "Well, Amber's just a storyteller. She's a storyteller." So, like, the smear campaign started from very early on,
they protect
and the
themselves.
trust
Yeah.
was broken very early on. And I grew up hating both of my parents. I looked at my mom and thought, ugh. And then I looked at my dad and thought, ugh, like, why am I stuck with these two people? They're violent, they're, you know, hypocrites. My dad will sit there and say, with a cigarette in his hand, "Don't you grow up and smoke," and I'm, "Why are you doing it then?" And I was
Yep.
that kid that I would just look at him, and I'm just like, "Well, why are you doing it then?" Or my mom, who, you know, would drink damn near every day throughout my whole life, even into adulthood. And then when I quit drinking, my mom would sit there and she's like, "Oh, just have a beer. Oh, just have a beer." And just trying to get me, like, pull me back into her
Mhm.
world.
Yeah.
I wanted better for myself. I was like, "No, I don't wanna do this, and I don't wanna be an addict. I don't want to be an asshole. I want to treat my kids better." For instance, my when I was younger, I would leave all day, and I'd go all day without eating at, like, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Mm,
Yeah, with my friends, and we'd go to apple orchards, and I'd pick apples off the ground just to get some substance in my stomach. And my mom and my dad never gave a shit, you know? I tell my kids, "You are at home by 1 o'clock for lunch, no later. You are at home by 6 o'clock." And we eat dinner every single night together as a family because of it.
mm,
It was one thing that I looked at my childhood and I said, "I need to change this." And, that lack of care just really shaped me growing up. And then when you put the patriarchy in there and you show how, it correlates, there's a reason why they were all like this. There's a
mm,
reason why my grandma and my aunts and my uncles and my mom and my dad never talked about the fact that my uncle molested his daughter and was convicted.
yeah.
I mean, like, I found him on a fucking Google search. That's how I found out, and I have his mugshot
Wow. Yep, yep,
staring
yep.
at me, and I'm going, "What the hell?"
Mm.
And then I started thinking about all the things, when we go to family reunions, and he would sit there and have all the girl nieces giving him massages and stuff, and whoever gave him the best massage was, like, uncle's favorite niece, and it just makes me sick to my
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they protected this
That's
man.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, patriarchy, I I wanna see that shit go away. I
Yeah.
want it dismantled. And the only reason why it is not dismantled is because there are male-centered women that are upholding it right now, and we really need to start shining light on the bad, because it is so harmful. So harmful.
Yeah. And then, I struggle with that too. I get there's certain people that I feel more, I guess, like sympathetic or empathetic to, who are unaware, and then you have people that are just assholes, and I don't mind being an asshole back, but it's
Mhm.
hard to kind of it's hard to kind of put everything together, right? Because you get, and like I get upset that more people aren't saying things, but at the same time, literally every single human being on this planet has been indoctrinated with the
Mhm.
patriarchy in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. There's absolutely no way to escape it if you're born into this world because that's the type of world that we're in. So it's like, how, then it would come down to just being upset that people aren't waking up from this,
Mhm.
mind control, indoctrination fast enough. Well, it's a lot of like
Yeah.
deprogramming that we have to do
Yeah.
on top of, it's just so much, how deeply
Mhm.
ingrained
Yeah.
patriarchal everything is
Yeah, and it's
and
fear
how,
too. I mean, it's very
yeah.
fearful,
Mhm.
knowing what's on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
what
the
happens.
thing about that though is that there's so many women like me, like you, that are on the other side, and we're saying, "It's good. Come,
It's
Yeah.
great
it's
over here.
love."
Yeah.
Like, you don't wanna be there anymore, I promise you. Life is so much more beautiful over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do want to emphasize again, it's men that are to blame. I do feel that, yeah, women do have the power to dismantle it, but it is the fault of men. I want to just be accountable for that, or just make
100%.
sure that's said. And
percent
we just need to level up is what it is. And I keep going back to that. When somebody's trying to hide up crime, they have all this energy, and we have to match that energy. We're at this energy level of I just need to survive. I'm just trying to be a good person. We need to level up to that just act of just desperation that they show.
Yeah.
And like that example I gave about my father, you start bringing the receipts and that crumbles them. And I think that's where our power is, because he just did everything in his power to stop from. I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to a judge." And they're threatening me. They're just like, "Well, then we won't get anything, or he'll get more." I'm like, "If he gets more, he deserves to get more then. Let's let the judge say." And I'm not happy. I'll actually get money if he needs more and pay him.
Right.
But I want a judge to say it, and I want you to show the receipts. And I did get a couple people, and they were women. I did get a couple and say, "Actually, what you're saying does make a little bit of sense." They're the ones that are willing to listen. It's just
Yeah.
like, all I'm asking for is proof that he deserves what he claims he demands.
Mhm,
But that
mhm.
instant defaulta, well, he's being generous. He could ask for so much more, and we should be thankful that he's only asking for this. And
Mhm.
everybody just falls into that. But it only takes one voice to at least plant the seed of doubt in a couple other people. And even
Right.
if we don't win that battle, there's going to be more battles, and the more people we can appeal to, and like you said, it takes a while. It's like when you're swimming, the first time you push away from the ledge, you're like, "Oh shit." And then you go right in the water. But once you learn to swim on yourself, then you're free, right? And it takes a minute. And there's that moment of discomfort when you're learning.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time, actually. I mean, I started to feel good. I don't know. I guess it was about 10 years in Peru, and I started like reprogramming my mind. But
Mhm.
and somebody else said, the problem with growing up with a narcissist, he taught me how to lie, because I
Mhm.
wouldn't tell him about things that I cared about, because he would destroy them.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so then it, even though that protected me when I was in his presence, when I met good people, I was still lying to them. And
Yeah.
it's just sort of like you just carry it
Masking.
on. Well,
Mhm.
it's just because
Masking more so or
I just mean it's a habit. You think this is the
yeah.
only way to behave. You've never even seen anything else, right? It's like off the map. And I have to go make the map so I can go inhabit that other part of the world. But in my mind, I'm just like, and it's like I would divide friends up into groups. I didn't want friends together. I would just do
Mm.
this, just
Yeah.
like this is the way to do things. And I've had to overcome that. It takes a long time, but
Yeah.
you do feel so much better. Then you get to have wonderful conversations with wonderful people like you do. So I'm grateful to have made that journey.
Well, I'll never be okay with breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
I've had breadcrumbs my whole life, and I'll never be okay with it.
It's better to
I
have nothing than breadcrumbs. That's the trick
Yeah.
I think you have to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, and it's like, but why are those are, it's like it's this or
Yeah.
nothing. Like why do I have to settle for that?
Yeah.
And that's why when I left and I've been away from everybody for 10 years now, I built my own castle now
Mhm.
where there are no breadcrumbs. I don't make my children fight for breadcrumbs. I give them 100% unconditional love. And it's one thing that my children are not perfect by all means, and they're going to make their own mistakes. And I recognize that. Um, but I would never tell my children that they have to earn my love.
Yeah.
Do
No.
this and then I'll love you
Conditional love.
more,
Yeah.
or do this. And yeah. And that's how I grew up, you know? Listen to me and I'll love you. Do this and I'll love you. Constantly putting me in harm's way and I'll love you. And I will never settle for breadcrumbs ever again. But I think it's important for people, especially white women, because yes, it is men's fault. The patriarchy is men's fault. 100%. But as women, especially white women, we are upholding this for them. We're just saying, I got you. I'll hold you up. It's okay. And we have to let it collapse. We have to let it
Yeah.
completely collapse. And I want women to know that, yes, it has to cost you something. And yes, when you do leave, you're going to lose a lot. But there's a whole other side to this. And there's a whole support system. And there's a whole, I've got 2 daughters right now that I'm raising. And one thing that I'm never critical of them, especially their looks, their
Mhm.
interests. If they like, you know, wearing certain things, or they have special interests in certain things, that I don't. And then some things I'm just like, well, that's kind of silly, but I would never tell them that, because that's not fair to them. That's their interest. That's their lives. It's what brings them joy. And I want them to know that women need to support women. We can't be so critical. I remember the first time I ever put makeup on, I was in 7th grade, and all my friends were wearing makeup, and I wanted to wear makeup too. So I went in and I found my mom's makeup and I did it, and I looked in the mirror and I was feeling myself. I was like, I look kind of pretty. This is nice. And I walk out and my mom laughed at me and called me a clown.
Mm.
Yeah.
I would never do that to my daughter, and those are things that are hurting us as women.
Mhm.
That's the internal dialogue that we're giving to our children.
Yeah.
There was during COVID, one of my daughters, she was like, "You know what? I just kind of want to shave my head. I want to do something crazy." And she did. And I would always come up to her and I'd rub her head and I'm like, "I really like that you did this.
Yeah.
This feels great." But, I didn't look at her and be like, "Oh my god, look at you.
Yeah.
You're kind of like a boy," Like, I just
Yeah.
I don't understand when mothers do that to their daughters. And in a patriarchal system, that's what mothers do to their daughters.
Yeah.
They're constantly breaking them down.
Mhm.
And then those girls grow up to be women that do it to their daughters,
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
cycle just keeps continuing.
And a lot of
So
times they're
yeah,
they're
go ahead.
male-centered women also, and
Yeah.
teach their daughters to feel the same because they've been told that by their mothers, and now
Yeah.
they're looking for that validation from men or
Yes.
whoever. Yeah.
It's never
Yeah.
coming because you can never be good enough for them. They know this
Mm-mm.
too because as long
Mhm.
as you're and one of the things, like, when I was in college, I was so stressed out. I got sick of being stressed out about my grades. So I just had the mental shift. And the importance of these mental shifts can't be understated. Where I just said, you know what? I know I'm doing A work. If the professor doesn't give me an A, it's a judgment on them. It's not on me. I told this to one of my professors, and he was like, that sounds kind of arrogant. I'm like, it protects me. It's like, why should I give the power of my self perception to other people? And I think maybe that's another thing we don't emphasize enough.
Mhm.
'Cause, yeah, when they make you feel like nothing you're ever gonna do is gonna be good enough. Everything that you love, they're just like they ridicule and
Yeah.
mock it.
Yeah.
And it's like they
Mhm.
wanna make themselves the center of your whole universe. And
Mhm.
it is this fear-based system too. And we see that in the government. It's like and they're so good at dividing everything up. As long as everybody are divided or is divided, we don't have the power to come together and topple them and then demand
Mhm.
a better system. So but you're right. I mean, it always feels more convenient to just go along, Just go along
Yeah.
with it. Just accept
Mhm.
it's not that bad, It's not that bad. You should be grateful, It's just like
Yeah.
it's really, isn't it? You look at just about every messaging tactic, every rhetorical tactic of the Republicans, it deflects to that, and that conditioning is upon us all. And even if you've made steps and you've gotten better, you're still like, well, that's just the normalized way of doing things. That's common sense, Let's revert back to traditional values. All these phrases that they used, they
Yeah.
all
Mhm.
support that patriarchal system, which is to abuse you, to keep you down. And it's like, yeah, you have a moment when you break away from it, you go down, and then you come straight up through the glass
Mhm.
ceiling, and then all of a sudden you get this whole reality. It's like the end of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Boom! You're flying right through
Mhm.
the ceiling, and you get the whole world now. But it's like, yeah, you do have to submit, and they just depend on that. That you're not going to take that moment of discomfort, to inherit the better
Mhm.
reality.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
I'll
that hierarchy, you
yeah.
always have to have somebody below you, men have to have women below them, women
Mm,
have other women below them, and that's the thing that just it, like, fries my noodle sometimes because I always think to myself, like, men have this solidarity that they just, no matter what, it's this unspoken rule.
right.
We are better than women, and we can control children and do whatever we want with children because there's nothing stopping us
Mhm.
because we control women too. And then somebody like me comes out and says, "You ain't controlling shit. You're
Mhm.
not, no, you're not going to do that." And then what happens when there's a lot of us that are like that? But then how do we keep them from upholding? And I think we really just need to uphold each other, you
Yeah,
know?
uphold each other to push back against it.
Yeah, because, like, other white women are not my enemy. Black women are not my enemy. Women in general are not my enemy. Right now,
Right.
my enemy is men.
Mhm.
So I haven't figured out how to, what the formula is to get, that 51% of white women that voted for Trump on board with everything because people are not willing to give up
Yeah.
a lot, especially when it comes to their identity. And whiteness is such an identity. And white women aren't, they're not stupid. They're in survival mode. This is something that they've done the math, and proximity to whiteness and the patriarchy is something that gives them safety and resources and social standing and legal protections. And, you know, how do we get people to walk away from that? We have to build
Yeah.
community to try and get them to, like, see the other side. Like, hey, we have this over here too, and it's better.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I was married to a white man, who is racist, a supremacist, and, that's a whole whole 'nother story. A lot of, not knowing who I was in the beginning, not asking questions and, things. But towards the end of my marriage is when it, I was scared because I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. But the time everything really started unraveling and we started really butting heads and started arguing over race and politics was in like 2019-ish, 2018, when I just started when Trump's presidency happened, I wasn't political. I didn't really pay attention to politics at all, but, it had gotten to a point where shit was getting insane, and I'm hearing about the children in
Mhm.
detention and immigrant detention, and that really stuck with me, and that's when I started waking up like, this shit is crazy. Like, I don't pay attention much, but this doesn't seem normal." And we started butting heads, and I was scared because being a stay-at-home mother, he's white, he's in the military, he's told me he can use that against me, to get over on me and things. So I have nothing, we have a house together. We were living in Alabama, Georgia at the time. I have no friends and family in that area. I have no money saved up. I haven't worked in, ages. So I did get a job online and started working again, but it's like I still didn't really have anything. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going to go, all of these things, but I knew once shit started hitting the fan, like, I can't be with this man, as a Black woman, as somebody with Black children, or mixed children. I can't be with this, and I'm not going to allow them to grow up thinking this is okay, and I'm definitely not okay with it. I he struggles with substance abuse as well, so that was another huge factor,
Mhm.
is the refusal to get help with that. But I just kind of did it, I just kinda did it, I didn't really think. I started kind of saving things up, like, going to Reddit and trying to find out what women in like abusive relationships or, about to leave marriages, what they do when they have no money. And so I started saving things up, like buying things that I could take with me, feminine products, whatever the hell it was, that I could like kind of bit by bit use to buy things with. But like once I finally kind of just did it, said the thing, like I want a divorce and I just said I was gonna do it. I just started making moves and, I was in a position where I was able to move on my own because we sold our house and, from that I was able to, move, to the state I'm in now and, get an apartment, furniture, everything. So it all worked out in that way, but leaving him was like the most refreshing, like, enlightening thing. I remember when I in my head and we were still living together, still sleeping in the same room, because like,
Mm.
we weren't
Mhm.
butting heads, and we had a really nice bed, like, I'm not giving that up, so we can spread apart. But, like, when I made that decision, I changed my phone passcode to, like, whatever spells out free. And I remember that because I just remember in my head, this was before we
Mm.
had even physically separated or anything. I just like I feel like I was done, because I had been dealing with these issues for a long time with the substance abuse and then, the racism and stuff came after and that was just enough. But I say all that to say, like, again, I had nothing. I had been working from home for like 10 years, or sorry, stay at home mom for 10 years, working on and off, jobs from home. But it was like I had to start a new life. I had to be on my own with 2 children. I had no clue how things were gonna work. I just knew I had to get out of this situation because I wasn't happy and because I didn't want my children to be raised around that, environment. So, it was just so freeing once I finally was able to make that move. Um, and I learned so much about myself, during that time and reflecting back, and I don't regret anything, but that's all that to just say that it is once you reach the other side, it is so much better to not have to raise, another man child, to not have
Mm.
to pick up after
Yeah.
somebody, to not have to yell at somebody for whatever, to not
Yeah.
everything that I was doing, I was literally doing his job and mine and raising kids and doing this, and it's like
Mhm.
not having to worry about that stress. If anybody fucks up, it's me, and that's okay. I only have myself to blame, but like I don't have to deal with anybody else trying to tell me what to do, trying to insert their opinion, trying to mansplain to me. I don't have to listen to any of that shit. And now I can I can raise my children in the way that I know that they should be raised and teach them how wrong these things are so that they,
Yes.
have an example now of what not to do and how not to act. And it sucks that it turned out that way. But again, like not having that in my life, even though I'm struggling right now, like no man can change my struggle. No man. I've just found that
Mhm.
like I personally don't need one for anything. Like they do nothing for me. I can buy a step ladder or a ladder to like reach up high. And that's really the only thing I found that I have
Yeah.
needed since my
Or
divorce,
it's
like
like,
5.
I can paint a wall pink without getting
Yeah,
looks,
you can
you know?
do whatever the hell you want, and it's
Yeah.
just so freeing. Even if you
Yes.
Mhm.
leave and don't have much, like, that sense of
Yes.
solidarity and being able that independence and not having to answer to somebody and realize nobody's hovering over you or telling you what to do or making you feel bad. You're just there in your thoughts, and you can reflect and grow, and it's just so amazing. So, I just wanna say that.
100%.
Yeah,
Natasha,
I
you're so
think
brave. I wanna
I
just
think
applaud
yeah,
you for your bravery.
absolutely.
thanks.
That is, great job.
I wanna and one of
'Cause
the
it's
things you
hard, it
said
really is hard
I
to
It
make that
is. It's
decision
easier said than done.
and go, but
but it's
once you
just a choice. See, that's the
Mhm.
thing that's so critical, and that's the thing that's
Yeah.
amazing. Even the narrative in the of the life of Frederick Douglass, he just walks off the
yeah,
plantation. And it's just you make that choice, and that's I think and it's like I was reflecting when you were talking because the moment I had of realization, you know, when my dad called us into the family room, and I'm just like, "Oh, they're getting divorced." Like, before they even said anything, I knew this was
You
happening.
knew.
And he's like, "Yeah," and he says he's leaving, and the sense of relief I felt, which
Mhm.
shocked me, like, "Oh," and just like a weight, and it's like and I don't know if I would have had your bravery, Natasha. I think I would have stayed. I think I would have been a dutiful son if he hadn't have made the choice to leave. So what you did is something it's astonishing. I mean, it's just really it's so remarkable. And yeah, but it's just like it shocked me that I had that response. That it was just like, "Oh, he's going. I'm," and it's like, "I'm free now. I'm free from this. I don't have to." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, come and visit me." It's like, I'm not going to make an effort to go visit you. Like what? What? You think everything's going to be the same? Plus, but you get this. But I want to say too, like making that choice is so difficult. And growing up, I'm always like, when I have kids, I will apologize to them. I will practice accountability. This was always my thing. Like a lot of what I did growing up was like, I'm just remembering, I'm like, I'm not gonna do that when I'm a dad. I'm not gonna do that when I'm a dad. And I remember the first time with my child when I was like, I owe my child an apology. It was hard. It was hard to do it the first time. But I was like, I have to do it because I cannot face this reality. So I don't even know what the new reality is. I can't face the old reality. So I apologize. And I think that's a really like because as a parent, you do have power over your children, but not forever because they're gonna get big. And I'm in it now. They're brilliant and they're big and brilliant, and I'm so happy. But because I was accountable when I was growing up. I don't have to suppress their power now. And
Mhm.
somebody, Jessica Rage said, a lot of these men that are suppressing you, they want to be submissive to a greater power or like an authoritarian power or something they
Mhm.
A
perceive.
man,
Yes, and that's why we see this, what's
a
going on with
groupies.
MAGA. They wanted, "Oh, I'll do whatever you want, overlord." And it's just like it's the most pitiful thing. We gotta
Yeah.
talk. I'm gonna let you guys talk, offer a comment, but how we break patriarchal men should be another topic of our discussion. I think I have some insight there. I'll let you guys go on.
Oh, I have so many suggestions.
Yeah, I have none, so I would love to have that
Let's
conversation here
workshop them.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a system, and, it's just this systems can change, and we need to adapt, and we need to keep chugging forward, and,
Oh,
it's 51%, in 2024. By 2028, maybe it'll be 41%.
yeah.
Progress is progress, and, like I've always told my kids, don't ever shit on progress, even if it's just a little
Oh,
bit,
yeah.
because progress is progress. And this is something, like I said, patriarchy has been it's DNA coded in us that we are to be, in this hierarchy and, trusting ourselves. We can't trust ourselves because we don't know what's best for us.
Oh, yeah.
But that moment you finally do, and that moment you finally say, "You know what? I can do this." And I implore white women, especially that are watching this, really take a look at your life right now. Look at all of the things that you do. All of the things that you attribute to in your family, the taking care of the kids, the taking care of the house. If you're working, you have a full-time job or whatever, even if you're not working, just all of the things that you do, the things that you can fix, the things that you can
Yeah.
stand on your own 2 feet. You really can.
Mm.
Mhm.
And we don't need men to do that, especially when there's a whole support system of women that are just waiting there
Yeah.
saying, "We want to help. We want to," you don't need this abusive power structure anymore. We want to help you. Um, I haven't quite figured out how to talk to it yet, because by nature, I like to mirror people and I mirror their energy. So if you're an asshole to me, I'm gonna be an asshole right back. Really got to work on that. But
Yeah, that's a hard one. I do that too.
yeah, it
Me
is.
too.
And I've had to pull back a few times just because, I do talk about controversial things. Most of my, Substack articles and essays are controversial things. And I do get comments, and sometimes, I've learned to just kind of take a breath when I read a comment that's, really attacking. I just kind of take a breath and I try to before I respond, I really explore, well, why would they be feeling that way? How can I explain it? Because I've probably felt that way at one point in my life. So how can I, what got me out of that mindset? And then how can I explain it to them in a more constructive manner? But It's not all the time. There's sometimes where, like, people will say something and I'll just send back like, "Fuck you."
Yeah. I would say be careful of those comments. A lot of them are
Yeah.
fake. They're afraid of us, though. I mean, there's so much of an effort to silence people that tell the truth.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot
Yeah.
of fake comments, so your
Mhm.
thoughts,
Mhm.
Natasha?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I feel the same. I think that, the more that we, I guess, just keep talking about these things and, Nick Paro has, his Intelligent Masculinity show, and I feel like if more men start, doing those things, like
Mhm.
positive podcasts, start, I don't know, like, I can't force somebody to do it, but I just hope that, as the stigma of mental health is starting to sort of decline and people, men in general are starting to open up about conversations about, mental health and, empathy
Mhm.
and feelings and talking about, the way that they feel instead of holding things inside, that it's going to become, more and more normalized because that really is the way that things should be. And hopefully, that'll just in turn, that's not a patriarchal way of thinking. So if we
Mhm.
can get more men to just, I feel like a lot of it is mental health because again, they were also born into this white supremacist
Yeah.
Christian nationalist
Yeah.
nation and this world of patriarchy. And, they too have to, break that mold. And most men don't have figures in their life, especially right now, because it's like now's the time people are starting to wake up. So
Mhm.
I well, I can't say most men, but, a lot of men at least, don't have figures in their lives teaching them,
Yeah.
that it's a lot of suppression and, don't do that. That's girly. Don't,
Yeah.
Well, the
don't
explosion of that manosphere, that
yeah, yeah.
happened, back in I don't know, when did it really kinda
COVID,
start?
right?
Like,
Yep.
2022 is when it really kind of
Oh,
started kicking off,
well,
but
Mhm.
let's goes beyond that, I think. Yeah, it's because I would say, like, I grew up being a guy who liked to read, right? And I had to fend off and it was only when I kinda grew to becoming a I would I just happened to fortunately be, like, 6 feet tall and 220 pounds, so it's like, at some point, that pressure just stopped being there, but
Mhm.
smaller men who like to read are gonna get the shit kicked out of them, and it's
Mhm.
just sort of like and then these men have their identity, it's like, I fix motors and reading poetry is for girls," and then if a girl
Mhm.
can come along and fix a motor better, they start to intentionally lie about the complexity of things, and that's the
Right.
thing I think that's all part of this, because you feel, "I can't break away from this person because the world is so complex, and only he knows how to handle it,"
Yeah, and it's
until
really not.
oh, yes. I had that realization when I was maybe 17 or 18. We were playing a game. I wrote this article about it where my dad was deliberately giving me fake information, and I was curious enough. I finally developed I'm like, "Why is he lying?" And it's like,
Mhm.
because you don't realize you're being abused yet. You're still, like, trying
Yeah.
to find an answer because 'cause you're not looking at because you're abused, jackass. You're like,
Yeah.
"Maybe it's this," and you're putting in all this effort to justify them, and it's
Mhm.
just sort of like, how about if I just switch over as he's an abusive asshole? It's like, oh shit, now everything lines up. All this stuff
Yeah.
that I was trying to connect didn't make sense before, now it does. So just giving yourself permission. And I tell this to my wife and kids. It's like, run it through that. Run it through with
Yeah.
me. And if you determine that I'm being abusive, we have to accommodate for that. But if
Right.
somebody's like, you aren't abused. That's other people that are abused. It's never you. And that's part of this habit. Because most of the people that are submitting to these abusive relationships is because they've been indoctrinated never to think of themselves as the abused because they live in the greatest country ever, right? And you should be
Mhm.
grateful to live in the greatest country ever. And everything here is perfect. And if things are bad, it's because of your, inferiority somehow. And it's
Right.
just, yeah, it matches. The
Mhm.
relationship abuse
Or they
matches too.
dealt with it when they were kids, why can't you deal with it? Or
Yeah,
they
I
Right.
turned out fine.
why
Actually,
can't
you
you deal
didn't.
with it?
Everybody thinks.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, my dad did the same thing, my dad would sit there and tell me how good I had it, and I just looked at him like he had a horn growing out of his head, 'cause
Mm.
I didn't understand. I was like, "Why would you say that?" And then, my dad would also minimize the abuse that he endured when he was a kid. He told a story one time that, he forgot to feed the chickens when he was a teenager, and when he finally remembered, he went into the chicken coop and my grandma was laying in all the chicken shit waiting for him, and when he came through the door, she blasted him in the face with her fist, and I'm like, "Dad,
Weird. She
you
like kid, like
yes."
Rambo? She, like, covered herself up? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, like, put in a chicken shit ghillie suit or
The
something, I
the
don't know what
chicken shit opened its eyes and hit him.
but he
Wow.
would minimize, like, his abuse all the time, and I would just look at him
Oh.
horrified, or he would
Yeah.
talk about how his dad would go out and get a switch
Yep.
and beat them
Yeah.
until they bled, and I'm just going, "Are are you okay?"
Yeah.
Like,
And you're supposed to be grateful because you didn't have to endure that same thing, but
right, "You're
they
lucky
won't.
I didn't put a switch to your ass," and I'm
I
like,
did. I
"My
did.
God." Yeah. No,
I used to have to go
my
pick
dad
my
loved to kick.
switches.
He liked to, like, kick us in the butt, and, my mom was like a hair puller, and my mom would just, like,
Ah,
slap into, and we would be sitting there like this just trying to get her slaps, but
wow.
I didn't have belts or switches, but I sure had, I had my share of abuse in the family.
Yeah.
I had a critical moment in my life too when I'm just like, I'm not gonna try to gain the approval of my father. I'm going to instead gain the approval of my kids. And
Mhm.
that little switch in thinking, it's like they're the ones I'm focusing on. Because
Yeah.
you're always chasing. Your kids like give you their love freely. And it's just like just delight in that. And it's a lot of these abusive people, they're just like they're dismissive of their the love of their own child because they're so focused on this love they'll never get, and because it's something they'll never get and they'll never achieve, they don't realize it's nothing. It's an illusion, you know? You're
Right.
trading everything. When I was talking with Annalisa Brunner the other day, we all make this deal with the devil. We give up all our chance and happiness and we get nothing in
Yeah.
return. And we just
Mm.
have to recognize it's nothing.
Yeah. It really is. So, our parents, and I have to give it to the boomer generation. Uh they they really did endure a lot. They really did. And, we only know what we know, and we can only fix what we can fix, I guess. But I just know that me as an older millennial, I was born in 1982, um, going through all of the significant historical events that I've gone through so far in my life, I can look back because I have memory, and
Yeah.
I can look back and I can
Yeah.
say, "Oh my god, this wasn't right. Oh my god, this is horrible." And especially now that we have language for it. A lot of the time, I was sexually assaulted as a child at like 3, 4, 5 years old. I didn't have language for that. I absolutely have language for it now. My children have language for it now.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we're seeing a lot more child sex abuse cases coming out, is because children have language for it now.
Mm. Mm.
And I always encourage, I'm just like, don't let people talk to you like that. Don't let people touch you. If somebody ever touches you like that, who do you go tell? And we have our people that we go tell. And I have this
Yeah.
conversation with them all the time. And, you know, one thing that I hated was anytime my parents, I'd have a question about something because I just wanted to know. My parents would always say, "You're too young to understand."
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
And that was just them deflecting because I just don't think they had language for it. I don't think they
Yeah.
understood it, or they did understand it. They just wanted it to kind of go away and sweep it under the rug. And if they don't talk about it, it won't happen. But now we have language for it, and we talk to our kids about it. My 11-year-old the other day, he heard the word rape at school, and he came home and he asked me about it. He said, "Mom, what does rape mean?" And I had to tell him
Mhm.
in a kind of non-graphic
Yeah.
way possible, but I wanted to tell him more of like a power structure of,
Yeah.
that kind of dynamic. But he asked follow-up questions and I answered follow-up questions, and he absolutely understands it. And he knows it's wrong. And
Mhm.
I think that that's one thing that mothers really, if you've got sons, you really have to have these talks with
Yes.
them, and you have to put that like, how would you feel if somebody did that to you? And then
Right.
have them name the names. I would feel powerless. I would feel sad. I would feel mad. I would,
Mhm.
like, have help them have language for this. So
Yeah.
then if the familiar happens to pop up in their life, they know who to go to. They have language for it.
Yeah.
They know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I had, people, predators all over me up all through my teenage years, and I didn't know what to do because that was just such a normal thing. I just had to navigate my way around it.
Yeah.
And it caused depression, and it caused addiction, and it caused me getting into 2 marriages with men that were much older than me. My first
Mm.
husband was almost 5 years older than me. My second husband was almost 11 years older than me. And it stole my entire childhood and my entire young adulthood away from me. And I want better for my kids. I don't want that to be stolen from them, and I want them to have the language. And kids know more about things than we give them credit for.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
they
goodness.
do. That's funny you mentioned that because my 10-year-old son, asked me just last week what rape was.
Yeah.
And I kind of assumed he knew because he understands, he knows what sexual assault is thanks to
Mhm.
Donald Trump. And,
Yep.
every time I turn on the radio, Epstein. So he just knows that
Mhm.
name. He doesn't know exactly the thing, but he always goes, "Oh, Epstein." Like he knows it's something bad.
Yeah.
But he asked me last week too, what's rape? And I didn't, I tried to explain it in the best way, but since he already
Mhm.
knows sexual assault is, I just told him it was when, like Donald Trump did something he shouldn't have done to a woman,
Mhm.
forced himself on her. And, these are conversations that I have with him all the time too, because I don't want him to think it's okay. But he's autistic also. So, like, he has a lot of independence and,
Mhm.
autonomy. And I think even if I didn't have these talks, he would know it felt uncomfortable if somebody did something to him, but we had
Yeah.
those talks and, he's like, "I know, but I just keep reiterating, I don't care who it is,
Mhm.
if it's, your family member, if it's this person," and, also, but he gets it because he doesn't want that to happen to him, and he just knows you can't put your hands on somebody. You need to give people their personal space.
Yep.
And we just have, unfortunately, all of these horrible male examples in the public right now.
Yeah.
Um, including in my life and his life, unfortunately, to show him exactly what not to do. So it's just a constant lesson, like, okay, it's every single day he's learning. And I just feel like I have to work double time again because his dad is the opposite and trying to instill
Right.
racism and prejudice in him. So I
Yeah.
feel like I have to kind of overcompensate for that. And
Yeah.
because of that, he knows a lot. So, but it is very important to educate them. Every child
Yeah.
is different. So, you might have to word it differently depending on the age, but I
Mhm.
don't think that you can ever start explaining at least about touch and, people, crossing boundaries and physical boundaries and even mental boundaries if they're saying something that makes you uncomfortable. Those talks are
Yeah.
really important to have right now. And, the more moms and parents instill those things
Mhm.
in their
Mhm.
kids right now, the better, the
Yeah.
better the future generations will be because we're going to start ingraining good things and positive
Mhm.
things and the right things instead of allowing them to get away with wrong things and calling them out when they do wrong things and teaching them why instead of whipping them with a belt or,
Yeah.
having them go pick a switch. That doesn't teach you why what you did was wrong.
Yeah.
Just like
Right.
taking your anger out on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just fear. It's just
Yeah.
instilling fear, like,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work because all it does is it creates adults that, need
Yeah.
therapy.
Well, I would say too that, yeah, patriarchy is rape culture. And I wanted to fortify you a little because Natasha, just one compassionate person in a life is the lesson they're gonna learn. Like, this structure of abuse and oppression is fragile, and that's why
Yeah.
they're so frantic about defending it all the time. That's why, and I think that's why I say when we have to level up, because in our schools, we allow them to take out all the LGBTQ plus books. We need to fight back really hard on that
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
those are the books that demonstrate, oh, this is an affectionate, caring, compassionate relationship. And they
Mhm.
want to remove all those examples from the schools. And this is why when I grew up, I was always carrying a book around. And these patriarchs and these white supremacists, they're afraid of you because it doesn't take much of a crack in the veil of delusion that they put over our eyes for you to realize they're full of shit, and they want to cover it. And once you see them pull their pants down, that's why I keep saying we got to take guys like the current president, pull his pants down. Once you see how empty he is, people will
Mhm.
stop acting like, "Oh, I just need to give up all my own personal ambitions and just submit to him."
Yeah.
It's like, 'cause that sounds easy. "Oh, yeah, I can just rely on this other person to take care of everything." Never gonna happen. I tell my girls about it a lot too. I'm like, "Do you after being in math class with all these boys, you wanna just turn over all your finance. They're like, "They're a bunch of idiots. I'm never gonna do that." But that's often the first step.
Mhm.
Like, make a bank account in your name. And I've helped women, get away from abusive relationships, and that's always the first thing. Get control
Yeah.
of your money. And I was reading this book called, and even when you're educated and you have savings, you're still vulnerable to this because the
Mhm.
first thing these
Financial
men will do,
abuse.
yeah,
Mhm.
they will make you quit your job. They'll make you leave your career. They'll burn up all your funds. "Oh, I'm the smart investing guy." They
Yep.
lose all your money, and then you're stuck, because then it's 2 or
Mhm.
3 years go by and you're like, "How do I integrate?" Because everything changes so fast. So it's
Yep.
ongoing, and whether you're in the process of breaking away from it, well, it's just we have to take down that obstacle because nobody's ever safe.
Mhm.
And we
Yeah.
also, yeah, we just have to have more. Right now in our school system, they leverage, like, the natural confusion about sexuality, your development. They make us feel guilt, they make us feel shame. They
Mhm.
attack young men for being too affectionate to their friends who are boys,
Mhm.
and that's all by design to make us adopt this patriarchal cruelty rather than compassionate, loving, caring relationships that are built on cooperation rather than dominance. But, yeah, once we just start making that effort, leveling up, insisting we talk about caring relationships in school, have representation. All those things are way more important. And even in that case, it's easier to be like, okay, it's not that big a deal. We'll just let them have their way. Every time you do that, that's when we lose. And it's those
Yep.
little fights are the ones that build up.
Yep. Collectively,
Yeah.
'cause if
Yeah.
yeah, there's that cheesy saying, "If we all do a little, we can do a lot." But
Oh
it's
God.
true,
So true.
you know?
I believe it now after these last 2 years. I didn't believe it
Yeah.
before. I believe it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is true, and even, the autonomy of their bodies with my boys right now, by the time they were 7, 8 years old, I was maintaining their privacy. If they were naked in their bedroom or something, I would always knock first, and it's a respect thing too, because we're teaching our children respect. We're teaching our children,
Yeah.
respect other people's autonomy. If you want your autonomy respected, you have to respect theirs. So, when they were, I remember there was a lot of my friends who were boys and even the girls even where they like showered with their parents or if they didn't shower with their parents, like their parents were in the room when they were like naked. And I was one of those kids because growing up in the UP, everybody takes saunas and it would be me and all my cousins and my aunts and uncles and we'd be naked in a sauna. And it seemed so normal until I got to the age around, like 6, 7, where I was like, I just saw my cousin's wiener. I don't know how I feel about that, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to take saunas anymore. And I was like 6 or 7 years old when that happened. So when my kids were around there, I was like, okay, that's kind of my gauge. Now they're being self aware. They need to, and I needed to teach them self awareness. Their private parts are their private parts. And if they're in the bathroom or something, I wait. Or if I can't wait and I have to get in there, I announce myself and say, hey, cover yourself up. I'm coming in real quick. But like those are they're such small things to do, but they're so important,
Mhm.
and that kind of starts teaching boys too that, that their bodies are sacred, just like women's bodies are sacred.
Yeah.
And we need to respect each other's privacy when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess we're kind of running out of energy, but this has been lovely, and we've gone over time a little bit, but we had good momentum there. Oh, let's keep it going. I mean, you guys are wonderful. I really appreciate both of you, and this idea of, yeah, dismantling these patriarchal men. It's a lot easier than people realize, and that's what's been. Kamala
Mhm.
came so close to just making him implode on that debate. I wish she just pushed a little harder because you could just make these guys throw themselves to the ground and scream and yell and pull out their hair and look ridiculous. And I think we need to do that. And I
Yeah.
keep saying it's like, yeah, you have to have that collapse of their structure that they have in place to fortify themselves before they can grow up. I mean, that's what we do for these adults. We have different tactics for these kids, and the different tactics are just, give your kid a hug, tell your kid you love them.
Yeah.
Don't send them off to school being mad at you every morning because then they go to school and they fail their classes because they're mad, and it's just these
Yep.
different ways that we can support. It does. It opens things up. I don't know, it took me a long time, it really did, to just accept the love that I was being presented. Because what they do is they're always waiting for something else, right? Like these they're like, They're waiting for you. You try to appease some patriarchal man. Here's a gift for you. Well, that's not what I wanted. So they're mad,
Mhm.
and they can never just be like, "Thank you," because giving
Yeah.
compliments is not something they can do. And I had to have that shift too, where it's just sort of like, well, this is the person that's showing interest in me, so that's the person I'll spend my time with, rather than being like, I'm looking at this other person who doesn't care about me. And it's just, I guess that's your personal sense of your own importance, or your trust in your own feelings. And, yeah, once you make that psychological shift, it's just all around you, right? I mean, just the love is all around you to pick up, and the reason everybody's so frustrating is because they push it away
Yeah.
in exchange
Mhm.
for something that's never gonna come. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And
uh,
that's why we have a president who is incapable of being loved, feeling love,
yeah,
or loving himself.
yeah, and he just handles
Yeah.
cruelty. It just
Girl,
at
he
the
came
end.
from another planet. I have met some assholes in my life, but I
Oh,
have never met somebody or been, exposed
yeah,
to something
oh,
as freaking ridiculous as that man. Like, just the things that he says and the things that he does and the
yeah,
complete lack of just self-awareness. I mean, he just
he's as clear an
Yeah, I'd
example.
say his
Yeah,
brain needs to be studied once he
I
goes, because
so
seriously,
absolutely.
it's like a different type of sociopathy that, you know,
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
books on it
There's
right here. I should
something
probably read
going
them.
on there.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, entitlement, but plus power he didn't earn, plus lack of
Yeah. Yeah.
accountability equals
No, I
that.
know, I
Yeah.
call him fascism's participation trophy.
Like, does he have an amygdala, or is it completely, like, just gone, you know?
Oh,
I feel like we need to study that seriously.
oh.
Mm. And he's
Well,
got a national platform, like, he's out there, and all of our sons and
spewing.
daughters are looking at this man going, "Huh," and we're going, "No, no, this is
Yeah.
not normal."
And to think also, your 11-year-old, my 10-year-old, they have only grown up knowing Donald Trump, and I just
Yeah,
thought about that last week, like, that's
yeah,
insane. I mean, as far as presidents, all
Yeah,
they've seen is Donald Trump
yeah,
since
and
birth. It's crazy.
yeah,
neurodivergent just made a great point. It's not like a cognitive disorder of the guy. He's made these choices, he was
yes,
handed all these things. He deliberately chose evil. He deliberately chose to be an example of the patriarchy,
yep,
and it is really important. I don't think we have to study, you know, him like a specimen, but we study his actions and what he stood for, and because
yeah,
it does, it just shows, like, look at his life. Nobody loves him. Absolutely everybody despises him, and
mhm,
that's the consequence of all these beliefs, and so many of them, yeah, we're pressured to just not see and just to kind of endure and to comply with. "Oh, that's just a small thing. Why are you making such a big deal about this?" It's a big thing is why I'm making a big deal, because it leads to even
mhm.
bigger things, and yeah, that's what
It
needs to be.
does. I mean, if you think it, the hierarchy, like there's Donald Trump and then there's, all of his God, there's that Stephen Miller guy. My God,
Mm,
from under the rocks from.
Yeah.
But then we have this whole manosphere, like the
yeah,
Nick Fuentes, and this is. I think that's why I really like Hassan Piker right now because he's not perfect and he says some really off the wall stuff. But just like the Democrats pushed us to hate Donald Trump, it also pushed MAGA to love him. And I'm hoping that the same thing happens with some, like Hassan Piker, where he can kind of drown out the Nick Fuenteses of the world. Like I said,
uh,
he's not perfect and he's got his own faults and he says some things that need to be
yeah.
fact checked. But he's
We're
on
doing
the
it
right
there. Yeah.
and
We're
he
doing it
is
right here.
combat the Nick Fuenteses and the I don't want to say Charlie Kirk because I know
It's
that
Joe
name.
Rogan. He's another bad one. He's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, and the Joe Rogans and just the whole manosphere of influencers that are getting in our young men's minds. It's really just kind of turned them into I don't know. Did y'all watch that documentary called the
I
Manosphere?
haven't yet. No, I haven't.
Mm-mm.
It's worth it because it is really kind of eye-opening and just how easily triggered they can get by
Yeah,
just, saying something and then just
yeah.
pausing and
Well,
letting them sit with the truth inside of them, and they can't say it because they have this whole persona that they're trying to uphold.
there was the example with Don Staley, the basketball coach, and that jerk white
Yes.
supremacist who was so freaked out that he lost and he just couldn't take
Yeah.
it. I got into a nice conversation with Sherry Dunn about that and how
I heard about that, but I
yeah,
didn't
well
see it.
Yeah.
well, then the media scrubbed it. Like, you can't find
Mm.
because I posted the video and it got deleted, and that's how I got talking to Sherry about it.
Wow.
So it's like these white men, whenever they do this just toxic behavior, the media covers up. And so,
Yep.
yeah, it's really that's a good segue for all the wonderful people to become free or paid supporters of the 3 of us. Appreciate it. And, yeah, we don't have to I mean, I've heard about Hassan Piker, but we can do even better than that.
Oh,
Anybody who has
100%.
broken through at this
Yeah.
point
But,
is
you know,
some
we
sort of
gotta start
oligarch.
somewhere. And right now, you know, I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about the Democratic Party. Um,
There we go. Natasha's like,
Don't start.
yeah, I have a lot of feelings about the
Don't
Democratic
start it.
Party.
"Oh."
We're supposed to be ending.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
All right. I think we gotta get going, it sounds like. Well, yeah, we'll start in another one, but I love you guys. I love everybody in the chat.
Yeah,
Take
this was
take a
great.
moment. Sell
Alright.
yourselves real quick.
Um, all right, I'll go ahead first, I guess.
Please. I
So
don't
just,
need
you know,
to.
I appreciate everybody who is here. I'm sorry I'm horrible at, like, keeping track of the chat when I'm talking to people. I just get very whatever, but I just don't want anybody to think I'm ignoring them. I appreciate all of your comments, and, you know, I like Walter says a lot, I also, I'm not perfect, so if I say anything, you know, that's incorrect or, you know, offensive in any way, and I don't mean it. But you can definitely let me know and feel free to send me a DM. I'm, you know, willing to listen and learn too. But yeah, I just, if you don't follow me already, please do. All of my news work on Truth She Wrote is free. I'm never putting that behind a paywall because I feel like everybody deserves to know the truth when it comes to news. So, yeah, if you don't already follow me, just do. I'm at Truth She Wrote here and YouTube. Um, and thanks for having me, Walter.
Great.
And it was great meeting you, Evie, finally, and we
Yeah,
need
it
to
was. I know I've been
get
following
together
you
again.
for a little while now, and
Yeah.
I had an initial conversation with Walter. I am completely new to this whole thing. This is only the second live I've ever done ever.
Okay.
If you notice, I've been drinking water because my mouth goes dry because I get, I
Same.
don't know, a little bit
I've
of
got
a stage
coffee right
fright
now,
thing.
but
Yeah, but, you know, I got on Substack because I left my career. I was a early childhood education director for 20 years. And it's a dying machine, and I just could not back what was happening anymore. I didn't believe in it anymore. Education has been completely destroyed here in America, so I wanted to be able to do something else with my time and my knowledge, and so I started writing, and writing has been something that I've always done, but I decided to take it more seriously. So the last 3 years, I have been strictly writing. I wrote my memoir and finished it. It's in editing right now. I've got a novel, a trilogy going. I got book 1 done. It's with beta readers right now, and I've got a lot of good feedback on there. So, you know, I feel like, okay, I think I can do this. Um, but Substack was a place where I wanted to come and build community. And like Natasha, I don't require payment. It's free. I just put the stuff out there, um, mostly to get conversations going and to shine a light on the shadows of everything that we're navigating. And like, hey, did you hear about this? Hey, have you thought about it this way? That's kind of where my brain works. Um, I am one person. I read a lot, but I don't read everything. So if there's something that I write or something that I put down where the truth could be expanded more, or maybe that's not someone else's perspective, it's just my perspective. And you know, truth isn't linear. So, you know, there's all different kinds of things make up what we call truth. I want to have those conversations because I think those conversations are really, really important. You know, we are at a very critical pivot in life right now. And the more conversations that we have, I just posted a Substack article today about the new FBI mission center.
oh god, for NSPM 7. Mhm.
Yes. And You know, I
Obvious
don't even wanna I don't want to I think it's ridiculous that this is where we're at, but this is where we're at, and
Yeah.
we need to have these conversations because
Yes.
there's a lot of bad people trying to do a lot of bad things, and we need to fight for that. We need to fight fascism. We need to fight everything that's happening in this world and the structures and the why, and
Yeah.
we dig deeper into the whys, like,
Yep.
don't just accept things, like, "This is just the way it is."
Yeah.
Ask why,
Exactly.
always, always.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Overcome
I do
depression.
have 3 paid subscribers, which thank you very, very much. I do appreciate it. Um, and by all means, you don't have to pay, but anything that, you decide to donate or become a paid subscriber, I appreciate you so, so much.
Yeah. Oh, what you said is so important, both of you, what you said. And it's so wonderful and validating to have these talks and to kind of walk through a lot of things that are still
Yeah.
bothering me. It's like for years and years, we're doing it by ourselves with the whole world telling us that we are somehow in the wrong. And the more of us that can speak, and like I said, their control is a lot more flimsy than, might be apparent to us, especially when you're beneath their control. But that's why they fight so hard to keep us from seeing even like a little crack of daylight. And I feel in conversations like this, yeah, we expand that. We bring more. It's all going to collapse. It's
Yeah.
inevitable. It always has. And
At
we're going to
some
get
point.
there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, there's more of us than there is of them, and we
Yeah.
Yeah.
always have to remember that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys so much. I feel privileged to be here. Let's do an ongoing
Same.
conversation about this too. Taking down the patriarchal men, because I think I have some insight into how to do that. And
Yeah, I
you
would
guys
love
can pick my brain. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I know what makes them humiliated because I had to
Yeah.
walk there.
Yeah.
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 Perfect. All right. Thanks so much. I'll plug something. I'm talking with Ellie Leonard, and this will hold in an hour and a half. So at 1 p.m., we're talking about election integrity. So hope I still have energy. I got to go eat something. So thanks, everybody. You guys are great. I love this. And
Bye.
thanks to everyone in the chat.
Mwah. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.